Dum 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 bum bidi yum bum 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 bada bum 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 bum. Hmm. Dum dum yum dum. Well, hello, whoever, wherever, whenever you are, however you got here, wherever you're here, whatever you're doing. Denise Matto here. Welcome. Yeah. Okay. Continuing on in my Don Quixote jousting with the vast windmill called the estuaries. Once again, I don't know how many times I'm going to open one of my videos saying this because I re-look, I review my videos. You know, at my age, I like to remember what I said. And sometimes that means I have to watch them twice. Oh, yeah, I did say that. And yeah, and lately, of course, I've been fairly harsh. And I'm thinking, I'm watching and thinking maybe I shouldn't have gone that far. Maybe I should tone it down a little, etc. And once again, as soon as I start thinking that way, something comes up that says, no, 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 no. Keep going, keep going. It's like, really? So what came up this time? Um, I don't want to classify everybody who's fairly active in the TLC and estuary as being part of a cult because most, if most real cults, and I think this is a real cult, have a fairly large percentage of their members are not brainwashed. They're not really totally invested emotionally and intellectually in the cult. They're enjoying it for various reasons. They like the fellowship, they're in and out of it. They might have some criticisms, they might not, whatever. Most of the people in the TLCS are in that category. A few of them do sometimes touch the nerve of what I'm calling the little cult cluster that I believe the organizers of Estuary are behind. And that's why I'm concerned because Estuary appears to be sheep's clothing that's been carefully tailored and carefully fitted to effectively disguise more than one wolf. The main one being Paul Vanderklay, but he's got his partner Van Donk. And that's where I say, I'm being too harsh. Okay, and then of course I've been harsh to MarkDParker because I see this strange mixture. He spiritually appeals in a comical clown-like way. I mean, when he's acting like a Christian, he's so over the top. He's LARPing. He's playing a role. He's mocking people who pray. Let's open in prayer. He's mocking piety. He's mocking all of that stuff. And he knows it. Now, I did try to cut him some slack by pointing out that he's delusional, but actually, he might not be delusional at all. When he played the part of prophet, that was part of the role he's playing to try to entice Christians. A lot of the guys that are showing up in the TLC and estuary, and it's mostly young guys. That's why I'm concerned. When you start radicalizing young guys, you know, that's who you see showing up in some very bad headlines. They're all fairly young guys. And a few of them have shown a strange mix of left to right or right to left that comes out in a very confused political profile or psychological profile. And I do know for a flat out hard fact that Grim Griswold has described himself in his own interview over at Ben Boyce's channel. He goes into detail about his background. And he has named names out of a group that some say is a CIA front. I personally believe it might be what you'd call rogue because there are some actual former CIA agents associated with it. The late Robert J. David Steele, for example. There's another one who's still very active, and he's active in the same religious circles, similar. Not he doesn't show up in TLCS Blur at all, but his own New Age Sophia circle, a Steinerite, and I believe there might be a connection via Great Barrington, Massachusetts, Paul Vanderklay, between Chandra Vanderklay and this guy, Douglas Gabriel. Okay. They're totally outside, but they're in the circle that Grim Grizz came out of. And Douglas Gabriel is a Steinerite, a Steiner educator, and he's been in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, the home of the main Waldorf school in that area. Yeah, and Vanderklay does have his Massachusetts roots, and a cluster of the inner circle around him have Massachusetts roots. Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, that cluster there. So I'm looking at it at all levels. The physical, these people are geographically connected. There's a common organizational culture in that region that's affecting all of this. MarkDParker has been a major focus on my part because he seems to be the most active part of the radicalization funnel. This is a funneling cult. I know you don't probably haven't seen that term anywhere. I might be introducing it. I don't know. I think it shows up somewhere, but I don't remember where. But it works. A funneling cult where you create something like the estuary, and in a minute I'm going to show you that. But MarkDParker, as I say, I've gone from thinking he's a delusional Pentecostal to he's a play acting Satanist, play acting as a delusional Pentecostal. Because, see, that's one of the things that crowd does. They think that Christians are stupid. They think that everything that's going on with the people around Trump, some of whom lean into this Dominion Christian identity movement, which I do not. I fully, I 90% support Trump. There's a few things I don't like about him, but you can't have everything. You know, he is getting the stuff done domestically that we need done. And I don't believe he's a Christian fanatic of any kind. He grew up in what's that guy? Norman Peale, positive thinking. The precursor to modern prosperity gospel people. It was a Manhattan, New York, business-oriented, liberal Protestant. Norman Vincent Peale, that's the guy. That was Donald Trump's pastor growing up. So Donald Trump's Christian formation of his Christian consciousness was through that door. Now, a lot of people around Trump, Ted Cruz, for example, are heavily into the Dominion stuff that MarkDParker pretends to be part of. But at the same time, MarkDParker is promoting Antifa-style left-wing politics regarding attacking law enforcement agents and placing gang members from other countries above your own daughters and sons. And that's not, no. Christianity does not include destroying your own children. It does not. Never has. Anyway, so I'm thinking, let me show you the flat out proof. People want receipts. I got receipts right here on my tablet. MarkDParker. I thought this has to be a parody account. This can't be the actual MarkDParker. It's his old Twitter account. Here it is. It shows a dog, right? MarkDParker. I don't know if you can see all the print. I'll read it to you in a minute. Okay. This is his self-description in Twitter, X. To be a bodhisattva in Elon's cave for the benefit of all sentient beings in this little corner, TLC, of the internet. So he is doing the satanic thing. This is the thing about this satanic cult that Grim Grizz is part of, that Cicada 3301 is a very strong part of, that cost Isaac Cappy his life. This is that same satanic cult. And one of the things they have as part of their practice, I think it might go back to teachings by Michael Aquino, but they also, a lot of them are into Anton LaVey, which is performance Satanism. You perform a role in order to accomplish a satanic goal. That's why a Satanist will often perform as a priest. That's why they like to do the upside down reverse mass rituals and stupid stuff like that. It's part of their ritual practice. So what MarkDParker is doing, but they also have to let you know they got something going on where I guess because first of all, they believe all Christians are incredibly stupid. They believe Jesus was stupid. Well, he did accept the crucifixion. And we know from all of our teaching as Christians, the Garden of Gethsemane is the key point where Jesus prayed that he didn't think he could go through with it. But by the end of his prayer, he accepted the imminent crucifixion. This was before he was arrested and presented to Pilate. So there might have been an escape clause for him if he wanted it. So the devil thinks he's stupid because he didn't take it. In fact, I think Mel Gibson's movie shows a lot about that moment. The figure that plays the devil in Mel Gibson's movie, I think he shows that there might have been an escape clause. But for our sake, for the sake of our souls, Jesus went through with the ultimate sacrifice. Anyway, but in keeping with the satanic precept that if you are a practicing Satanist, you do have to kind of signal that that's what you're doing. And this that Parker has left up there is exactly that. He's the bodhisattva in Elon's cave, doing something to everyone in the TLC, knowing that most of the Pentecostal fundamentalist Christian or general Christians who've never stepped outside, they took it very seriously when their teachers told them, don't go looking into that New Age stuff. That's the devil. Don't open those books. Don't have those books in your house. Don't talk to those people. Yeah, that's a good way to stay safe. But people like Parker take advantage of those Christians because they don't know about this stuff. They probably wouldn't even see this. Parker makes a big show occasionally in his videos of saying he's not involved in X. So he doesn't want people to go there looking for him. Well, so it gives as the location Redlands, California. That's his town. It gives a link back to his YouTube channel. Joined March 2024, 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. No, little less than 2 years ago, year and a half ago. Now his postings, he reposts other people. He reposts other members of the TLC. 22nd of June, a couple months after he opened this channel, this page in which he announced he's going after the TLC from a definitely non-Christian direction. He now says, all things Dutch now fascinate me. And he addresses Paul Vanderklay. This is interesting because I think this might match the timeline of Grim Grizz. Because Grim Grizz told Ben Boyce how he started trolling Vanderklay until Vanderklay kind of took him on board. And now he's like Vanderklay's best buddy, along with MarkDParker, the two of them. Do you see how the cult works? Vanderklay could be the useful idiot, but he's gone past useful idiot because of who his wife is. That's why I think I don't cut him any slack. At first I was inclined to, but the more I looked into this, and especially now, I don't cut him any slack at all. You see what we're looking at here? All right. So he's got another one about Hermes. Now this doesn't really mean anything. It's just a reference to a video, and it's a question mark, but it's directed at Paul Vanderklay and Grim Grizz, asking them to discuss this. There were no comments on it. He wasn't getting much attention in this page. He wants to talk about the Inquisition. That's back in May 24. Yeah, so he's pulling up dialogues with Vanderklay and Grim Grizz about different theological things. And this one, dramatic reading of demonology, work of, I don't know who Adam Shea is. Let's look that up. Oh, that's interesting. So this is a super left-wing blue sky guy that he's directing their attention to. This is where Ben Parker is coming from. Okay. Um, yeah. He recommends Adam Shea for anyone who wants to go medieval or even merely early modern in their religion. Oh, he's talking about, yeah, everything from Hillsong being good. And he's got an attack on the Catholic Church. All right, you can see that this is in X. You will find him under MarkDParker with the dog head avatar. The X name is Temporal Flush. Temporal Flush. Interesting choice of name there, because he chose it at the point where he was initiating his assault on the ostensible, the superficial effort, the proclaimed effort of Estuary to be a Christian, generally Christian, ecumenically Christian, sort of friendly bonding zone, you might say, a community zone. Now, going into this, I found more out about Estuary, and it's interesting that Vanderklay's inner circle are in the few. He doesn't have many followers or following, but let me find the one I was looking at. Oh, wait a minute. Back. Estuary Hub. Now, this is where I can show you that Paul Vanderklay, Mark Parker, Grim Grizz, those three, and Luke Thompson is in on the early parts of this because he shows up in this stuff too. They are really very conspiratorially, in the full sense of the word, very proactively, very aggressively set up a very deceptive, dangerous cult, a satanic cult, because what they're doing is fully satanic. What Mark D. Parker is doing is he is a true Satanist playing the role. And the reason why he talks about, because if he did go to any kind of church, he would be very quickly called out by the actual believers in the Pentecostal. I mean, I don't care if you can identify a lot of what Pentecostals believe and do as being a little bit crazy and delusional. But true believers in something can pick out a play actor right away. That's why these people don't go into their groups. So here's Estuary Hub. Now this joined in 2022. Estuary is an in-person space where we welcome everyone's mental meanderings and where, over time, friendships can develop and mutual trust grow. That's the open kumbaya, let's all enjoy each other invitation. Um, the websites are Estuary Hub Get Involved, resources, find a meeting place near you, Estuary, get involved. This is a cellular organization. This is an organizing, physical, real world organizing radicalization cult. YouTube channels, two Twitters, this one and one called Estuary, which I'll visit in a minute. Sherry, here's a good one. Sherry is the only woman that I've seen. There was one other woman I've seen appear, and she's a Dutch Reformed Protestant who shows up at the Estuary meetings on their stage. Um, Elizabeth Van something, but she's got the Van in her name, so she's probably part of the heritage that Paul Vanderklay and John Van Dock are exploiting for their satanic cult. Sherry is part of the Lilith Book Club. I had a real interesting conversation the other day with um, Jacob, Jacob Federici. The he's a, I don't know. I think he considers himself a conservative or Orthodox Jew, but he says he doesn't keep kosher, whatever. Anyway, he's very knowledgeable, and most of his channel is oriented to the Jewish community, which I don't participate in that stuff because I'm I don't have time at my age to try to figure out another language. I've got enough with the two I know. Anyway, the Lilith Book Club. The interesting conversation with Jacob was how I was curious because all the New York Jews, the modern Jews, and Jacob is from a very different background. He's not an American Jew. I mean, he's an American, you know, person by immigration and naturalization. Um, but his background is from the Persian Jewish background. We talked a little bit about his name going back to the Silk Road and, tracing genealogies that were very interesting stuff. Obviously, non New York Jew. New York Jew, when I go anti Semitic, I wish there was a better word because I am anti that entire group of people, the New York based, the Zionist. Anti Zionist isn't enough because that limits it to um, that particular religious doctrine. But in fact, there's a lot more to what the New York Jewish community's been doing to our country. Anyway, I digress. Lilith. I was curious because the New York Jewish community pushes Lilith big time as, really like Eve kind of stole her place. And I was beginning to wonder, is this a true old Hebrew idea? Or Is it something new age that the New York Jewish community is introducing, which they've introduced a lot of garbage in the last 50 years that was never in ancient Jewish stuff. That's why I hate them. One of the reasons. I have many reasons why I hate them. And don't tell me, oh, you can't be. Well, I don't care if you call me Christian or not, because I'm not doing the label. It is entirely in line with the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth that we should hate that which is truly evil. Anyway, Lilith was not a common idea among ancient Hebrew. It is mentioned in the Bible but in Isaiah in one place, but when Jacob looked at that, it's clear that that isn't even really a reference to a personality like a specific woman figure. It's a reference to a spirit of the night, a spirit, and it identifies with chaotic death, and which it's very similar to the pagan fertility goddesses who are also identified with violent death. And Jacob said that there's a strong taboo among traditional Jews that you don't even refer to that name. And it is known. This stuff that the feminists are pushing, the New York Jew based Gloria Steinem, Betty Friedan, I mean, you're a boomer if you know who I'm talking about, but the young feminists of today, those are their founding mothers. Um, that all that stuff comes out of there. It's a new age thing where they took an ancient concept of something that is so dark and evil that the people of that region, the ancient Hebrews, wouldn't speak of it. But yet, the Lilith Book Club, that's part of the female side of the satanic stuff. Now, Sherry, she's doing a thing with different ones on, there's some kind of Saxon Gospels, some writings that come out of old Irish and Celtic Christian writings, probably from the years close to St. Patrick. And so she's masquerading as a kind of an Anglican-oriented liberal Christian. Nobody with any serious spiritual commitment of that nature would participate in something called a Lilith Book Club. So we're looking at a true satanic masquerade here. Totally. Now, I said I was going to check out estuarily because I didn't see what we gleaned from that. Oh, all it says is navigating the estuary. It's not coming up with anything. It's like this was set up in 2021 and it's coming up blank. No posts. What? Maybe there's, oh no, it's a slow load. Never mind. Okay, November 23rd, reposting of Paul Vanderklay, London Estuary, announcement estuary meeting in Oxford. They're going on the English side of estuary. Edinburgh meetup in Scotland. Yeah, this is an international cult. Yeah, and then there's this group in Georgia. I did see some videos from a guy who's based there, the Republic of Georgia over near Russia, not the American state of Georgia. Okay, March 23rd. Burn Power. That's the guy's name who's over there. Yeah, so this is basically meetup information. Irish information, Irish location stuff. Yeah, so I mean, this is not This is not a casual group of YouTubers who are trying to pump each other's channels to build as I say, a kind of warm, fuzzy Christian discussion community. This is far more serious, and I am 100% right, in my humble opinion, about it not just being a satanic incursion into the Christian world under the cover of the Christian Reformed Church of North America, which pretends to be an old Dutch Reformed Calvinist group. There's a lot here. There's stuff here that's so deep. I need to get a snorkel before I go on. But the satanic connection to this particular direction it goes deep in history. But we've got to stick to what's going on today. Now, the political side of it. We know that there's a fringe MAGA group that's a little bit crazy. Every political group has the fringe crazies. I mean, they got to go somewhere, right? And there is a group that's really oriented towards the Third Temple cult, the Dominion fundamentalism, which is where they really want to have a kind of a turn Washington, D.C. into a kind of a Pentecostal Vatican. I mean, they really think they're going to do that. Ted Cruz, our senator from Texas, recently made a very disturbing statement in an interview with Carlson Tucker, in which he stated that it was a biblical obligation to fight Israel's wars, which goes way beyond whatever Trump is doing for global politics, and scared a lot of people, including me, into realizing that Ted Cruz, I don't know, he's, you know, but that element is there. There are some people in Trump's inner circle, but Trump himself, as I say, his upbringing is not in fundamentalism or doomsday holiness Pentecostalism. He's like the businessman's Christian, positive thinking. But of course, he allows everybody to jump on board to win the elections, the original election in 2020 and subsequent elections. He had to kind of accept anyone who wanted to get on board and vote. Let's go. We're going to get this done. And he's a pragmatic man. That's why he did that. But at the same time, how far do they infiltrate? I think some of the people in his inner circle sometimes tweet things that suggest that they are Dominion Christians, Dominion national identity types. But they're by no means the majority of Trump's people. Trump himself, yes, he goes along with Netanyahu on stuff. That's one of the things I don't like about him at all. I don't believe we should be supporting Israel. I believe we should maintain a neutral stance towards the wars over there. I believe we should be speaking up against genocide, because when the Israelis are done killing off the Palestinians, you think they're going to stop there? Really? I don't think so. Because I already see the next waves being set up by the killing machine that they are. But anyway, yeah, so you've got this issue where you've got to keep an eye on what's going on up there in Washington. You got to keep an eye on this Dominion Christian stuff. A lot of it is entangled with the Mormon Church through Mitt Romney. You can find it in all the Baptist organizations. When you go into a Baptist non-denominational, which is a denomination, church, and you see that Israeli flag up there next to the preacher's podium, yeah, turn around and run, 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 run. There's a lot of that going on. And there is that Jewish community that's promoting the third temple cult where they are together with the Christians who are pretending to be part of the Jewish community, but the fanatics among them still believe all Jews must go to hell because of the crucifixion. And the Jews who are supporting the third temple cult thinking that we're going to have some kind of rapture, but it's really going to be what they're doing. See, what if you look at the theology behind the third temple and the theology of Jewish Messiah beliefs, the ones who get fanatic about it, and every so often they declare some rabbi to be their Messiah. A lot of that, when you read it, it comes up that it is a collective conjuring of a Messiah figure. And the Christian belief about Jesus as Messiah is nobody conjured Jesus. Nobody got together and called for him to arrive. The entire story of the Nativity and all of the beginning parts of the Gospel, Jesus arrives as a surprise. He is sent from God, not called by man. And that is one of the distinctions between satanic black magic and Christian holy, you might say, magic, spirituality. Christians do not call. I mean, I know you're going to say, well, some do, yeah, but they're wrong. They're heretic when they do that. They're not supposed to be doing that. They're not supposed to be calling on God to do certain things as if he's their butler. But if you consciously do that, if you set up a practice where you are calling on a spirit to do something in the world, that's black magic, satanic stuff. Satanism is from below heading up. God is from above heading down. See, it's very basic. But that's just basic theological stuff to accept or reject as you prefer. But the receipts I think I just showed you, yeah. I'm not cutting Parker any more slack for being possibly a delusional holiness Pentecostal. He was never a Pentecostal in his life. I doubt very much he even LARPed to be immersed in a baptism, although he might have. He's playing a role. He's part of Vanderklay's Discord coven, and it is a coven. See, the whole thing about the Cicada 3301, when it got down to it, what's going on with Isaac Cappy, there are a bunch of people around him. Grim Grizz knows who they are because he spoke about them. They actually practice coven rituals. And you can be a total materialist and say, that's all garbage, Denise. Why worry about it? It's superstitious nonsense. Well, there's a thing that's not superstitious at all. If a single individual human being sits down at a meeting with 10 other human beings, and there's been all kinds of times that this has been done as a psychological experiment, and it's been shown to have happened out just about every time. If all of the other humans start claiming something totally absurd, they're sitting at a square wooden table, and they all start claiming that they're sitting at a round golden table. And the guy who walks in is like, what? Look, it's a wooden table and it's square. What are you talking about? But he's trapped in there with them for who knows, many, many hours. And they continue to persuade him, attempt to persuade him. Finally, sooner or later, he cracks, and he not only agrees with them just to get them to leave him alone, but he eventually convinces himself that indeed this is a golden round table and not a square wooden table. And this has been shown to be physically how the brain works in terms of human dynamic of group consciousness. So you can be a complete atheist and say, Denise, you're being superstitious. You're letting your own religious beliefs carry you too far. Blah 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 blah. It's like, no. If you've got a group of people who perform as a coven to do rituals and follow certain rules about how they're going to support each other in their LARP, their live action role play, which is for the purpose of deceiving and exploiting and eventually actually killing other human beings. Either the way Isaac Cappy died, through what appears to have been an engineered suicide, or through some of the other things that have happened in which the target isn't killed but kills others. And that's been seen with the Charlie Kirk assassination, where these different weird groups, unrelated as far as I know to estuary cult, are showing up. But it's the same dynamic. It's a group cult dynamic that is creating these radicals. And sometimes it might not be on purpose, like this whole thing with the Charlie Kirk assassin's roommate being into that perverted furry tranny stuff. Those people are likely to become tragic headlines because of the insanity of what they're doing. It's not that they set out to become. But in the case of a funneling cult, such as I am alleging Parker, Vanderclay, and Grim Grizz are engineering with the estuary, they do know that a tragic headline is their goal, their final goal. And I'm glad to see more and more individuals in TLC beginning to stand up and pick at different parts of it. Somebody out there is challenging Parker on the way his violence. He doesn't openly state he's supporting violence, but he supports things that elicit violent figures. Now, this is another thing. He likes to do thought experiments. He did this whole lynch mob thing as a thought experiment. That is deep psychological training tactic. If you allow yourself to become part of that ritual that he set up as a lynch mob thought experiment, you are placing yourself in a position to be manipulated by that energy. And at this point, I would say he knew what he was doing. He wasn't just thinking of something clever to carry out his delusion, but he knows. These people that are in Paul Vanderclay's Discord, this MarkDParker and these others, they are highly sophisticated in group psychology. This goes back to the whole thing about the CIA front stuff. People who really think that the Cicada 3301 was a full CIA front. There were CIA agents, former agents involved. People like Douglas Gabriel, who probably got kicked out for being, I mean, you listen to him for any length of time, you know the guy's nuts. He spends half his videos, the openings consist of him complaining about how he has all these PhDs and he's obviously brilliant. But he acts like he had trouble getting them. There's something wrong there. He's got to really impress you with the fact that he has a bunch of PhDs in all kinds of religious, philosophical stuff. And he's one of the former, but the one that died recently, he died during the COVID pandemic. Robert David Steele. That was one of the central figures. And I think these might have been rogue CIA. They might have been in good standing with the Satanic Democrat regime. But as it became obvious that America was not going to continue to tolerate what the Democrats have been doing, I mean, even without Trump, we would have found a way to throw them off. Uh, these rogue CIA guys took their training to set up their little civilian LARP games. And they are involved, heavily involved with satanic, actual organized Satanism. The Anton LaVey Church is an organized church. They have ordained priests. I don't know what they call it. They probably don't use the word ordained, but you can go through training to achieve a certain status so that if you present yourself as that status, people can actually check with it. There is a church that they can check with, say, is this guy really one of yours? Just like a Catholic priest, you can check with the local diocese. I mean, there are all kinds of little cult leaders who run around calling themselves a priest, maybe dressing up as one. But if they're independent freelancers, it's easy to find out. You call the local diocese and say, no, he's not one of ours. And there's the same thing with these satanic groups. There are several. There's the Salem, Massachusetts based Satanic Temple group that's also heavily involved with the YouTube stuff. They're heavily involved with the pedophile stuff. The Anton LaVey group is older, and the Michael Aquino group is within the military and probably has a lot to do with weird stuff around Donald Trump, because there's weird stuff around General Michael Flynn. And he's another one I have mixed feelings about. I see him sometimes as, you should know better than to be associated with this. But then he does and says things which suggest that he's going to carry out good policies. So I just pray for him. He's originally from a Catholic background, but he has made statements, public statements, which reflect the Cicada 3301 Gnostic part, Gnosticism. Some people claim it's a type of Christianity, but it's not. It's actually older than Christianity. And it comes out of the same region, Hebrew, Abrahamic region, Middle Eastern, but it's also heavily involved with a lot of the Greek philosophical stuff. Anyways, weird stuff. It's the Gnosticism is I don't know. It's crazy stuff. You're supposed to but that's where it feeds into Satanism, because you're supposed to absolutely hate the flesh, which means you hate human existence, and that's where we get a lot of the postmodern craziness. But there's a strong Gnostic religious group within the Cicada thing. So these things, they entangle. And you say, well, then you're mixing all these things up. But there are some clear directions where you say, wait a minute, if you are this, you cannot claim to be that. And MarkDParker made his signal that he's probably a senior level coven Satanist when he made that X page directly aiming at the TLC. Well, God bless some, have mercy on some, and to hell with the rest. That's biblical, because we leave it up to God to decide. And when we say to hell with the rest, we're doing what the Bible tells us to do. If you get to the point where someone's not going to listen to you, when you're trying to advise what God wants in terms of what scripture and everything else says, and they continue to do something, you just let them go. Let them go. So, God bless some, have mercy on some, and to hell with the rest. You get to choose which group you're in. Denise Matteau, over and out.